first I thought it was some building notice. The warehouse had been turned into apartments years before, but it still had the kind of problems old buildings like to keep. Heat that worked too well on one side and not at all on the other. Pipes that sounded like somebody dragging a chair across concrete. Elevator doors that opened like they were tired of being asked. So I bent down with my work bag still on my shoulder, picked up the note, and almost missed the key sitting beside it. My spare key. The one I kept on a plain silver ring. The one I was sure had been in my coat pocket that morning. I unfolded the paper. "You dropped your keys." That was all it said. No name, no extra line, no little smiley face. Just 4 words in neat handwriting. But I knew who wrote it. Laurel from Unit 8. My next-door neighbor. The nurse. The woman I had spent 7 months politely avoiding like she had done something wrong, when the truth was she had not done one single thing wrong. I stood in the hallway longer than made sense, holding that note and staring at my key. The lights above me buzzed faintly. Somewhere downstairs, the front door shut and the sound rolled through the old brick walls. I should have just unlocked my door and gone inside. I was tired, my neck hurt from leaning over drawings all day, and I still had revisions waiting on my kitchen table. But I could not move right away, because Laurel had found my key, picked it up, brought it to my door, and left it there without making it a thing. That was exactly like her, from what little I had allowed myself to know. And that was the problem. I moved into that building 2 years after the end of the relationship I thought was going to become my life. It ended at a kitchen table, which somehow made it worse. No big scene. No shouting in the rain. No slammed doors. Just her sitting across from me with both hands wrapped around a mug, telling me calmly that she did not see us the same way anymore. I remember looking at the plant behind her shoulder because I could not look at her face. I remember the dishwasher running. I remember how normal the room looked while everything in me went quiet. After that, I got careful. Careful with plans. Careful with people. Careful with anything that made me want too much. I was 34, an architect, and I spent my days designing homes for other people. Kitchens where families would stand half asleep making coffee. Bedrooms with morning light. Courtyards where neighbors might become friends. I knew how to shape space so people could live inside it. Then I went home to my own apartment and kept it as empty as I could without it looking sad. The warehouse building helped. It was all concrete floors, high ceilings, exposed beams, and big windows that made everything look cleaner than it was. My apartment was quiet. That was what I wanted. Quiet felt safe. Then, the first week I lived there, I saw Laurel. It was early, maybe a little after 7. I had stepped into the hall with coffee in one hand and my laptop bag in the other. Her door opened before I reached the elevator. She came out in navy scrubs, then stopped like she had forgotten why she opened the door. Her hair was pulled back, but half of it had slipped loose. She had one hand on the door frame and the other pressed against her forehead. She looked like she had just finished holding herself together for 12 straight hours and needed 10 seconds before doing anything else. I said, "Morning." She looked up. Not fast. Not startled. Just tired. Then she gave me this small smile. Not bright. Not practiced. Just real enough that it hit me in the chest before I had a chance to prepare for it. "Morning," she said. That was it. One word. I got into the elevator and stared at the buttons like they had suddenly become very complicated. By the time I reached the lobby, I had already decided I needed to stay away from her. That sounds ridiculous now. Probably was ridiculous then. But at the time it felt reasonable. I had spent 2 years turning my life into something steady. Work. Gym when I remembered. Groceries on Sundays. Calls from my brother I sometimes answered. No surprises. No Hope showing up in the hallway wearing scrubs and looking at me like she knew exactly what tired felt like. So I kept my distance. Not in a rude way. That would have been easier to explain. I nodded when I saw her, held the door if she was behind me, said thanks if she moved aside at the mailboxes. Normal neighbor things. Safe things. But I learned her schedule anyway. That was the part one did not like admitting. I knew she left before sunrise some mornings because her door clicked shut at 5:18. Almost exactly. I knew she came home late on Wednesdays because her keys tapped against the metal frame before she unlocked her door. I knew she played quiet music some nights, never loud enough to bother me, just enough that a low melody slipped through the wall while I sat over building plans. Fridays, she ordered food from the same Thai place. I knew because the delivery guy always got lost and knocked on my door first. "She's next door," I would say, and every time, I would hear Laurel open her door and say, "Sorry about that." Like she had personally designed the hallway numbers badly. In the winter, she ran in the mornings. I saw her twice through the lobby windows, pulling on gloves, bouncing once on her toes before stepping into the cold like she had made a deal with herself and hated the terms. I noticed all of it. Then I acted like I noticed nothing. If I heard her door open, I waited inside mine until her footsteps moved away. If I saw her at the elevator, I checked my phone even if the screen was blank. If she stood at the mailboxes, I suddenly remembered something in my car or upstairs or anywhere else. 7 months of that. 7 months of pretending she was just the woman in Unit 8. Then I dropped my key, and she picked it up. I finally unlocked my door and stepped inside. The apartment was dark except for the desk lamp I had forgotten to turn off that morning. Rolled drawings covered half the table. A model for a community center sat near the window, all clean lines and tiny white walls, waiting for people who did not exist yet. I put the key on the table. Then I put the note beside it. For a while, I just stood there in my coat. The kind thing would have been to knock on her door and thank her. A normal person would have done that. A man who had not been acting strange for 7 months would have crossed the hall, tapped twice, smiled and said, "Hey, I think you saved me from a very bad night." Instead, I stood in my apartment, 12 inches of wall away from her and listened. Nothing. No music. No footsteps. No sink running. She was probably sleeping. Or maybe she was sitting on her couch with her feet tucked under her, eating late because her shift had bent the whole day out of shape. I did not know. I had made sure I did not know. And somehow that little note made the whole arrangement feel stupid. Not dramatic. Not tragic. Just stupid. I had built a life around distance and called it peace. I had been proud of how controlled I was. How little I needed. How clean the lines were. Then Laurel from Unit 8 found my spare key and returned it with 4 words. And suddenly I could see the truth sitting right there on my table. I had not been avoiding a neighbor. I had been avoiding the first person in 2 years who made me want to open the door. The next morning I tried to leave before she did. That was my whole plan. Not a smart plan, not a brave one. Just a plan. Get out early, avoid the hallway, send a thank you note later, and pretend I had handled it like an adult. I was already halfway to the elevator when I realized I had forgotten my portfolio. I stopped so suddenly the elevator sensor clicked and the doors opened without me. "Of course," I muttered. My portfolio was on the kitchen table under the same lamp as the note and the key. I had a client meeting at 9, and walking into it without drawings would have made me look like a man who had lost control of his own morning, which was exactly what I was. So I turned around. That was when Laurel's door opened. I heard it before I saw her. A soft scrape, then the small sound of something hitting the floor. Papers slid across the concrete hallway. Laurel was crouched outside Unit 8 in gray sweatpants and a hospital sweatshirt, trying to gather loose pages that had spilled from her tote bag. Her hair was damp, like she had showered in a hurry. She looked tired, but not the same kind of tired as that first morning. This was more annoyed tired. The kind that came with dropping everything before coffee. For half a second I almost kept walking. That is embarrassing to admit, but it is true. Then one of her papers slid near my shoe. I bent down and picked it up. She looked up at me. "Morning," she said. There it was again. Same word. Same woman. Different problem. "Morning," I said. "You lost a few." "Yeah." I like to start the day by throwing my personal life into the hallway. I glanced at the page in my hand. It looked like a continuing education form, so I quickly turned it toward her without reading. "I think this one escaped the farthest." "Thanks." I crouched and helped her gather the rest. Neither of us made it dramatic. No hands touching by accident, no music swelling through the pipes. Just two people on a cold hallway floor, reaching under the edge of the radiator for a wrinkled schedule. Still, it felt like something had shifted. When we stood, she hugged the papers to her chest and looked at me for a second longer than usual. "You're Caleb, right?" I almost laughed because of course she knew. Our names were printed beside the mailboxes downstairs in little metal slots. But hearing her say mine made me feel caught. "Yeah, Caleb Morgan. Laurel Hayes." She adjusted the strap of her tote. "Even though you probably already knew that." I did. "From the mailbox?" "From the mailbox," I said. She nodded toward my door. "And from the fact that you live close enough for me to hear when your printer decides to fight back." I looked at her, surprised. She smiled a little. "It has a very specific sound. That printer is a problem." I figured. Either that or you have a small angry machine trapped in there. That got me. I smiled before I could stop myself. Then I remembered the note. "Thank you," I said, "for the key. Last night." Her expression softened, but not too much. Laurel did not seem like someone who enjoyed making simple things heavy. "No problem. I found it near the mailboxes. I figured leaving it there would be a bad idea." "Yeah, very bad. You looked pretty done when you came in yesterday. I thought knocking might scare you." "It probably would have." She laughed once, quiet and quick. There was a pause after that. Not a bad one, just new. I should have said something else. Maybe asked how her shift was or offered to get her coffee. Instead, I held up my empty hand like a man who had forgotten how normal gestures worked. "I forgot my portfolio." She glanced at my apartment. "Architect." That caught me off guard. "Yeah. I've seen the blueprints through your window when I'm coming back from runs. Not in a creepy way. Right? I mean, your blinds are usually open. I didn't think you noticed." She gave me a look that was almost amused. "Caleb, your windows are huge and you tape building plans to the glass." "Fair. And you're a nurse," I said, because apparently we were trading facts we both already knew. "Also through the window?" "Scrubs," I said. "And the hours." "Ah, the haunted hours." "Exactly." She shifted her tote higher on her shoulder. "Well, good luck with the portfolio. Good luck with the escaping papers." She walked toward the elevator, and I went back into my apartment, but I stood there for a second with my hand on the door. That was the first real conversation we ever had. It lasted maybe 2 minutes. For the rest of the day, I remembered every word like an idiot. After that, the hallway changed. Not all at once. Nothing about Laurel happened all at once. It was smaller than that. A few days later, I saw her at the mailboxes, trying to open hers while balancing a coffee, 2 envelopes, and a bag from the pharmacy. Before, I would have slowed down, pretended to check a message, then come back later. This time I stepped beside her and opened mine. "Your delivery guy knocked on my door again Friday," I said. She shut her mailbox with her elbow. "The Thai food guy?" "He looked disappointed when I wasn't you. He's invested in my spring rolls." I could tell. She looked into her coffee like it might explain her life. In my defense, they're good spring rolls. The next week, the elevator stalled between floors for 8 seconds, which was apparently enough for Laurel to say, "This building is one bad mood away from becoming a documentary." I said, "As the architect in the elevator, I feel attacked." "You designed this?" "No." "Then you're safe." That became the kind of thing we did. Small comments, quick jokes, little openings that did not ask too much. In the lobby, she told me the front door stuck because people pulled instead of lifting. By the mailboxes, I told her the heat in my apartment turned tropical after midnight. Outside the elevator, she said Unit 6 played guitar like he was trying to apologize to the instrument. I started looking for her without admitting I was looking. And Laurel, to my surprise, looked back. One night, about 3 weeks after the note, someone knocked on my door. I opened it and found her standing there in leggings, thick socks, and an oversized cardigan, holding a plastic container in both hands. "I made too much soup," she said. I looked at the container. How much is too much? Enough that I started feeling judged by it. That sounds serious. It was getting personal. I stepped aside. Come in. She hesitated for just one beat. So quick another person might have missed it. But I saw it because I knew hesitation. I had been living inside it for years. Then she came in. My apartment was warmer than it should have been, because the radiator had once again decided winter was a personal challenge. Laurel looked around, not nosy, just observant. She noticed the model near the window, the rolls of tracing paper, the stack of books by the couch. You really are an architect, she said. I've been running a very long con. She set the soup on the counter. What's that one? I followed her eyes to the model. Community clinic. East Side. A clinic. She stepped closer, hands in her cardigan pockets. That waiting room is too exposed. I blinked. What? She pointed at the tiny white shape inside the model. People waiting for appointments don't always want to feel watched, especially if they're nervous. You need a corner that feels private without actually hiding them. I stared at her. She looked back. What? No, you're right. I know. I laughed. Confident. I spend half my life in medical buildings designed by people who clearly never sat in them while scared, tired, or trying not to cry in public. She said it casually, but it landed. I looked at the model again, then at her. That's actually useful. Good. Payment for soup. We ate standing at first, then sitting on opposite ends of the couch with bowls balanced in our hands. She told me about the worst vending machine in the hospital. I told her about a client who wanted a home office that looked humble but expensive. Laurel laughed harder than I expected at that. She was funny in a dry, quick way. Sharp but not mean. She noticed everything, then delivered it like she had been waiting for the right moment to set it down. But I also started to see the pattern. If I asked about work in a general way, she answered. If I asked if she had always wanted to be a nurse, she gave me a short version and changed the subject. If the conversation got too quiet, too close, too easy, she stood up or checked the time or made a joke with a wall behind it. I recognized the move because I used it too. A few nights later, when my apartment got too hot to stand, I climbed out onto the fire escape with a glass of water. Laurel was already there, sitting on the metal platform outside her window in a coat, her knees pulled up. For a second, we just looked at each other through the cold. Shared balcony? She said. Illegal shared balcony, probably. Then don't tell the architect. I hear he's unreliable. She smiled and looked out over the street. I sat down with enough space between us to make it easy for her to leave if she wanted. Below us, tires hissed on wet pavement. The city looked tired and awake at the same time. After a minute, she said, Your apartment too hot? Like a greenhouse. Mine's freezing. Of course it is. This building has no middle setting. It's either desert or meat locker. I laughed, and she smiled again, but then the silence stretched. This time she did not rush to fill it. Neither did I. That was when I understood something simple and inconvenient. I liked talking to Laurel, but I also liked sitting beside her when nobody said anything. That felt more dangerous than the talking, because talking could still be explained. Silence had weight. She turned her head slightly. You always this quiet? Mostly. By choice? I looked down at my glass of water. These days,